Okay, let's get serious for a second and talk about something that happens to almost every fish keeper. It's not uncommon to be knee-deep in this hobby, and after some time, things start to get a little stale and maybe even a little boring. I know a lot of you are watching this saying, "Are you crazy? This is the best hobby ever, and it's never boring." Well, let's be honest with each other. It happens. But the best thing about this hobby is that you have endless options of things that you can do that can create that spark again, bring that passion back. One of the ways you can make things pop again is by trying a fish that's easy to keep, they're gorgeous and available in tons of colors and varieties, and they're easy to breed. And word for word, that describes live bearers. In this video, we're going to cover the basics of keeping, feeding, and housing live bears, and also show you the most common species out there that you can easily find. And bring that spark back and reinvigorate this hobby for you and bring that passion back. Okay, I didn't mean for this to get weird. Let's just get on with the list. If you're new to fish keeping or you're just unfamiliar with these fish, you might not know what live bearer means. If a fish is a live bearer, it means they give birth to live, free-swimming fish, as opposed to laying eggs on the glass in a bubble nest like bettas or scattering eggs all over the place. This is really cool because you can put a half dozen or so live bears in your tank, take good care of them, and out of nowhere you'll walk by your tank and say, "Hey, wait a minute, there's a teeny tiny fish swimming around in there." Believe me when I tell you, this is a really cool moment. And one of the best things about it is, it's not hard to do this. It's literally as simple as making sure you have males and females together, take care of their tank, and keep them well fed. And poof, you'll have a bunch of free fish.
When you're looking into getting a fish that you've never kept before, one of the first questions you're going to ask is, what water parameters do they require? When we talk about water parameters, we're talking about things like pH, temperature, and water hardness. Keeping the parameters as close as possible to what the fish requires is important, but in my opinion, it's keeping things stable that should be your main focus. Here's what I mean. We've had conversations with people that have a pH of around 7.4 right out of their tap, and they think that's a little low, so they start adding all kinds of things like salt, baking soda, and other store-bought chemicals to adjust the pH. And what ends up happening is the pH starts fluctuating up and down, and it's all over the place. And that's actually way worse than if you just left it alone. If you're new to fish keeping and aren't up to speed on adjusting pH and hardness the right way, and you want to keep live bearers, just remember this. If your pH is between 6.8 and 8, you're fine. Most likely the water right out of your tap will be somewhere in there, and your fish will be much better off if you leave it alone rather than trying to mess with it. If you want to raise the pH a bit, then you should use something that's more permanent, like a crushed coral substrate. This will help raise your pH without it fluctuating all over the place. A pH of 6.8 to 8 and a temperature of 76 to 82 should be just fine. Don't overcomplicate things.
One of the great things about live bearers is you don't need a huge tank to keep them or breed them. Most of these fish will do perfectly fine in 10 gallons or more, and some of them will even do great in a 5-gallon. But just remember, bigger is always better. That's what she said. I'm afraid to use Steve Carell anymore because of the whole copyright thing. I don't know. There's a very specific reason I say bigger is better. Sure, mollies or platties will be fine in a 5-gallon tank, but the problem is we're not talking about 4 or 5 fish, because remember, they're going to breed. And unless you specifically only get males or only get females, there's nothing you can do about that. Think about this. You set up a nice 5-gallon tank. You get some plants in there and it's beautiful. And you throw 6 guppies in there. They're going to love it because they're going to have plenty of space. But you're going to blink your eyes and you're going to have 12, 14, 20 guppies. then you're gonna have a real problem. So the lesson here is if you're gonna keep live bears of any kind, you gotta do one of two things. Either put them in a 20-gallon so the family can grow and you don't have anything to worry about, or put them in a 5-gallon but only keep males or females. Actually, if they breed enough, even a 20-gallon will be too small. Just get as big a tank as you can.
Caring for fry is super easy. It's not much different than taking care of the adults, but there are some things that you do need to think about. The first is these are tiny fish that can easily get sucked up into a filter intake if you're using a strong power filter. Put an intake sponge on there so they don't get sucked up, or use a sponge filter, then you don't have to worry about anything. The next thing to think about is making sure your fry don't end up being food for the other fish in the tank. Yes, live bears will eat fry, even their own fry. So if this is something you don't want to have happen, there's a couple easy solutions. The first would be a net breeder like this. It's really cool and it has these suction cups that go right on the glass and you stick the fry in there until they're big enough to not get eaten. Don't forget to put a link to this in the description.
Okay,
Did you get that?
I think I got that.
Are you sure? The link to this. Put it in the description.
I will try to remember.
Okay, thanks. The other option is an obvious one. You just set up another tank. Once you see the fry, you take them out, you stick them in there, and then you have nothing to worry about. But if you can't afford another tank or you don't have room for one, then just grab one of these and I'll make sure that John puts a link in the description below.
Make sure I don't forget.
Don't forget.
One of the best things about live bears is most of them will eat pretty much anything you offer them. There's plenty of great community foods out there that'll do wonderful for your live bears, and there's a ton of fry foods that are super tiny pellets that live bear fry can fit into their tiny mouths. We happen to sell the nano food from Extreme. This is a super high protein food that's a 0.5 millimeter pellet. It's practically like powder. But if you want to take things to another level and have a little fun, try hatching some brine shrimp. Hatching brine shrimp is a fun little project you can do with a DIY hatchery or a manufactured one like this. You mix up some salt water, put the eggs in the hatcher with an air stone, and 24 hours later, you've got thousands of live baby brine shrimp to feed to your fry. It's definitely more work than just throwing fry food in there, but it's a lot of fun and great for your fry. Some of the best success I've ever had raising fry was feeding them live brine shrimp. All right, now is the fun part. Let's take a look at some of the best footage that I've been able to get of all of my favorite live bears. We're even going to show you a clip that came from my good friend Bob Steenfot from Steenfot Aquatics. He had a lot better ENDLERS live bears footage than I did. But anyway, rather than just talking your head off throughout this entire video, let's just take a look at some beautiful fish, listen to some nice music, sit back, and relax.